Alright. Squishy frog here. I was going to discuss something, but I decided not to. Not because, well, yeah, actually because I don't feel like it. I was going to talk about the divas, and in order to do that, excuse me, I was actually going to sit down and watch an episode of Totally Diva, the Bella Twins reality show, and you know, I thought about it. Like, I have to work 10 hours tomorrow. I don't have the strength, so I'm not going to watch that. In fact, I don't think I'll ever watch it. You have not earned that right from me to watch that god awful shit. But I don't know. I decided tonight I would talk about it's kind of another spotlight. I talk about Goldberg, and as anybody knows, I am not a Goldberg fan. I never was. Not once did I ever say like, "Wow, Goldberg is great." He's awesome. He's just the greatest thing to hit wrestling since the invention of the pile driver. I never once said that. Just because I felt that Goldberg's gimmick is so generic, so base, and really, I'll just say it, I hated the win streak. To me, the winning streak, when you're basing your entire gimmick around the fact that you have never been beaten, it is a sign, it's just a terrible sign, because, okay, I'll get into it, but really, Goldberg's first debut in wrestling was just during a regular match with, I believe it was Hugh Morris, Bill DeMont. It was just a regular run-of-the-mill match. No build-up, no nothing. It was never like, coming up next is the debut of a new wrestler, Bill Goldberg. No, he was brought in as kind of the underneath guy. Like, he was going to lose. Hugh Morris actually got a ring entrance, which, if you grew up in my day, the jobbers didn't get ring entrances. And so here they have this match, and suddenly Goldberg wins. Just out of the blue. The announcers are flabbergasted. Great word. They're just completely like, oh, what the, holy shit. Goldberg just won. Wow. Okay. And as the weeks went on, Goldberg would wrestle again and again and again, and he'd keep winning. And actually what a lot of people don't know is there was a point where he was going to wrestle Steve McMichael, because they were trying to do like a football versus football thing, because Goldberg was with the Atlanta Falcons, I believe, and McMichael was Chicago. If my football is accurate, which I'm no expert, but they were going to build up this program where these ex-football players were going to start wrestling, and they did this spot where I think McMichael beat Goldberg up, and their pay-per-view match never happened. But regardless, doesn't matter, because for the next, I'll say 2 years, 2.5, Goldberg, they build this motherfucker up like he is the destroyer of the destroyers, you know? He's just blowing through dudes in 5 minutes. Like every week they say, like, oh my God, Bill Goldberg, he's still undefeated. And they start rattling off his win streak. It's like 1 week it's 20-0. And then the next week, it's funny because 1 week it would say 20-0, and then the next Monday it would be like 33-0. So they just kept repeatedly building this motherfucker up. And what blew me away about it was the guys that he was beating most of the time were jobbers anyway. So it wasn't like he was doing this grand feat of just beating up all these. He didn't really have a high profile match until I think when he won the U.S. title. I could be wrong, but it's just funny because every week he would come out and they would just say, "Oh, Goldberg, he's 35-0, and who's gonna beat this man? I don't know if anybody can." Oh. And like I said, eventually they gave him the U.S. title when he beat Raven. And again, when you have a gimmick where your sole selling point is that you can't be beaten, that you haven't been beaten, you are just continuing to dig yourself into a hole. And there's going to be people out there that might bring up the fact, okay, here's the exception to the rule. Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant went 15 years undefeated. 15 years. Which was phenomenal. It's a phenomenal number. But here's the difference between Goldberg and Andre. Andre the Giant was 7'4". He was a huge fucking dude. It was believable that this man could not be beaten. And again, the Goldberg lovers out there are going to say, well, Goldberg was an intimidating guy. He was a big dude. Not anybody could beat him, man. And I would believe that if Goldberg was in the 1980s. But this was late 90s. This was the era of the small guys. The small guys were finally getting a break. And we were having matches where Bret Hart was beating Kevin Nash clean in the middle of the ring. The era of the big dude was slowly going away. And yeah, if Goldberg happened to be in the 1980s, he might have worked, but he didn't. Or he wasn't from the 80s. And Andre, like I said, was larger than life. Nobody was ever like this guy. Goldberg, there was 20 guys just like him. The big muscle-bound dudes who beat you up. And they had said many times before that the reason why Goldberg did what he did was to cover up his shitty wrestling skills, which he didn't have much. He was just the big, bald gorilla that beat people up in 5 minutes. And where was I? Okay. He beats Raven for the U.S. title, so now he has a title. And is there any kind of inherent drama? No. Never once does WCW put this guy in any type of jeopardy that he might lose his title. It always comes back to the winning streak. And again, to take kind of the streak a little bit, they're doing the exact same thing with The Undertaker now. The Undertaker, every WrestleMania, that's the only time he works. You know, I I playfully call him the Tom Hanks of professional wrestling, because if you look at on a yearly basis, The Undertaker does not show up until WrestleMania. He doesn't do any dark matches. He doesn't do any other pay-per-views. WrestleMania is the only time that dude works. And I'm not knocking it. I would love to be able to do that. I would love to be able to work one day a year, make that big payday, and never have to worry about working the rest of the year. Anybody out there would do it. But the problem is that now, every time somebody wrestles The Undertaker at WrestleMania, it's always about the streak, because he's never lost at WrestleMania. So every single year, whoever gets in the ring with that guy, it's always about, I'm going to beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. I'm going to snap the streak. I'm going to be the first person to do that. Whoop-de-shit. It's like, okay, you beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania, and all you get is bragging rights. It's not like they're going to build this foundation around it. They should. If the time would ever come that somebody would beat The Undertaker, I would expect that dude to get like 20 world title shots in a row. Or some kind of payoff. Instead of just saying, I was the guy that beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Whoop-de-doo. You know? Pin a rose on your fucking nose. And getting back to Goldberg, it was inevitable that he was going to get a world title shot. And again, people have brought up the fact that he looked so much like Steve Austin. This was when Steve Austin was at his peak in the WWF. And like, they were very similar. Shaved head, goatee, black trunks. Very, very similar. Different styles. But, like I said, this was Austin at his peak. So, of course, WCW is going to do everything they can to capitalize on that. And at the time, Hulk Hogan was the world champion. And this was when the NWO was pretty much at its zenith. And it was only a matter of time that Goldberg was going to get a title shot. It was inevitable. So I remember the one Nitro. They had a match. They had two matches, I think. They had Goldberg wrestled, I think, Scott Hall. And if he won that match, he would get a title shot. Oh, wait. They announced that there was going to be a title match between Hogan and Goldberg at the Georgia Dome. And again, this was WCW's mentality, where fuck pay-per-view, we're going for the ratings. We're going for Nitro. And you think about this. You think about having a match between Hulk Hogan, arguably the biggest wrestling name ever, and you put him in the ring with Goldberg. It sells itself. It's Hogan and Andre. But they never went that far. Okay, I'll tell you what happened, and I'll tell you what I would have done. They go to the Georgia Dome, and they say 40,000 people. I don't know if it was that big, but they announced the match Thursday beforehand. So you think Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You had 4 days to prepare for this match, or to have people prepare for this match. Then they go in, they have the match. Goldberg wins. He beats Hogan. And now he's the world champion. Okay. What have you done? What has WCW done wrong here? For anybody that's even just the slightest bit of a wrestling fan, you've basically given away pay-per-view money for free. You gave away the money shot, let's just say, for free. You know, okay. This is what I would have done. I would have had the match. I mean, go ahead and have the match at the Georgia Dome, okay? But do something in a way that Goldberg doesn't win the title. You know, you want to protect Goldberg's win streak, okay. Have the match, but then have the NWO interfere. You know, like heels do. They cheat. They cheat to win. So the NWO helps Hogan keep the title. Goldberg is still undefeated, but he didn't win the title. Now you have time to build a program around this. You have a chance to have Hulk Hogan say, okay, I almost got beat by that son of a bitch. We can't let that happen. So, all you motherfuckers, you need to protect me. I'm the leader here. So you go out there tonight and you kick his ass. And one by one, the NWO, all 2,500 members of the NWO, go out there. They wrestle Goldberg every Monday night, every Thursday night. Doesn't matter. But they keep losing. You want to keep Goldberg's win streak alive? Fine. But do it the right way. And so he goes through the entire group on his own. And you get to a pay-per-view. You get to, I don't know, like a Starrcade or something like that. I forget where they were in terms of a pay-per-view wise, but you get to a Starrcade or some big pay-per-view. And you say, okay, a month from now, at the next pay-per-view, we're going to have Goldberg, Hulk Hogan. And you had the time to build the match. You had the time to let the fans know, like tell their friends, hey, Goldberg and Hogan are wrestling again at the pay-per-view. We've got to see this. But of course, Eric Bischoff wants the ratings. He wants to beat Vince McMahon. Doesn't matter how. He just wants those television ratings. Because if you looked back during the Monday Night Wars, yeah, WCW was winning the ratings, but pay-per-view wise, they sucked. I mean, completely sucked balls. That was their biggest problem. They never built their pay-per-view match. They put their pay-per-view matches on free TV. So now Goldberg is world champion. He has reached the top of the ladder. Where the hell do you go from there? You can't go any further. You're the world champion. They did one thing right. But guess what? Goldberg didn't want to do it. They had him work, well, they didn't have Goldberg working. They had Chris Jericho working. Jericho at a super brawl or a fall brawl or whatever, he brings out this midget Goldberg, this dwarf-looking Goldberg, and he beats his ass. And he comes out on Monday, and in typical heel fashion, Jericho says, I beat Goldberg last night. Goldberg has his first loss because I beat him. You know, classic heel. The fans know that he's bullshitting, but in his mind, he beat Goldberg. And so they have another match where he calls Goldberg out to the ring. He knows that Goldberg is not in the building. You know he's not in the building. But Jericho makes the referee count him out, and lo and behold, Goldberg now has another loss, according to Chris Jericho. So now it's Jericho 2, Goldberg nothing. It's classic heel. It's classic building up to a match, a story. Because Jericho talks about this in his book, where apparently I think Goldberg kind of confronts him and says, this is Jericho's words, I hope it was worth it, Jericho, but the comedy bullshit's going to stop now because I don't do this comedy bullshit. And, you think that somebody your size can beat me? Fuck you. You don't know what you're talking about. Goldberg didn't have an ego at all, did he? He had no... Again, from what I read, and I can only go by that because I don't know him personally, but I'm sure outside of business he's a great guy, but as a wrestler, from what I've heard, he was a real dick just because he believed his hype. And you can't work with guys like that because that's all they do. They believe that they are unstoppable, they are unkillable, they are monsters, gods among men. And Jericho is the only one trying to work this angle, and it's working because fans are really kind of clamoring because they don't like Jericho. They want to see Goldberg kill him. In fact, again, Jericho's book, he brings it up that apparently, I guess Goldberg had a problem with everything and he wanted it stopped. So Bischoff said, okay, we're not doing this anymore. And Jericho fought to the end to get this going. And he said, I'll lose. I want to lose the match. I don't want Goldberg to beat me. I want to lose. I just want to lose on pay-per-view. Again, it makes sense. Build a match to a pay-per-view where there will be millions of dollars made. Everybody wins. The company wins. Jericho wins. Goldberg wins. But guess what? They don't want to do that. This is not hard. This is not a difficult concept. People want to see Jericho get beat up. Beat him up! And the payoff for this match was that Goldberg one night came out, speared Jericho in the aisleways, and the next week it was forgotten. A great angle forgotten just because Goldberg didn't want to get in the ring with Chris Jericho. He thought, I guess, Jericho was inferior to him. Where it could have been the easiest money in the world. All you had to do was get in there, spear Jericho, and pin him. And Jericho would be totally fine with that. But anyway, then Goldberg got injured. He was doing a thing with the NWO again when the NWO got back together, and he punched a window with his hand and ruptured his tendons in his hand. And he was out for 9 months. So right there, 9 months gone. This was after, of course, he loses his first match. He loses his first match to Kevin Nash at Starrcade, and he loses the title. And as everybody has said, old wrestlers, whatever, they all say the same thing, that when Goldberg lost his first match, all of his momentum ended. Well, no shit, it ended. Because that's all you built it on. And it's been said that after Nash beat Goldberg, They were going to reform the NWO. This was after the finger poke of doom. Which pissed me off too. But it was going to be after that, the NWO was going to get back together, and they were going to do the exact same thing that I suggested earlier. They were going to feed Goldberg every single member of the NWO leading up to a match against Hogan. And Goldberg decides to punch a window with his hand and get hurt. So, right there, you lost your big baby face. And any plans to build him up, to build up any kind of credible story arc is gone. And then, of course, we get into the Vince Russo era, which is a completely different story. This is where I kind of lose track because I didn't watch much of WCW, but from what I've seen, Russo tried to build a program with himself around Goldberg. He like said, okay, your winning streak means nothing anymore. You're starting at the bottom. You lose one match, you're fucking gone. And Goldberg ended up turning heel at one point, and I don't. There's only so much you can do with a guy that is a big, tough dude who can pick you up and slam you. If you can't wrestle, there's not much you can do, you know? And it's not that he couldn't wrestle, he could. But he just didn't want to work with smaller guys. I don't know. But then, of course, when Vince bought WCW, it was almost inevitable that Goldberg would show up. You weren't sure, but you heard rumblings about it. And finally they announced that Goldberg was coming to the WWF. And apparently he thought he was going to get the same treatment he did in WCW, but he didn't. He came in with some good fanfare. He wrestled The Rock in his very first match, beat him, did a program with Jericho, a proper program with Jericho. Those are some good matches, mostly from Jericho. I saw him in Hershey, live event where he won the world title, where they did the bullshit, my career is on the line, and if I lose, I have to quit, and blah, blah, blah. Like, we haven't seen that 80,000 times before. And, of course, it leads all the way to WrestleMania and the infamous match with Brock Lesnar. And you want to talk about a bullshit match. Those two didn't do a thing for 15 minutes. If you get a chance, watch this match. Get on YouTube, look up Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar. It's one of the most ridiculously stupid matches ever. Just because they're like the same build, same size, same wrestling kind of style. But they were both leaving. Goldberg, his contract was up, and he wasn't going to renew it. Brock Lesnar had already had he's going to have a tryout with the NFL. So, this is the age of the internet, so everybody already knew they were leaving. It was a spread out there, or whatever. Everybody knew Goldberg was leaving, Brock Lesnar was leaving. So what the fuck was the point of having this match? It meant nothing. Less than nothing. It was just two big dudes beating each other up. And there was going to be no payoff at the end. Because Goldberg wasn't going to be there anymore. Lesnar wasn't going to be there anymore. They were leaving. And after that, Goldberg never seen again. After that, he disappeared. He didn't. I would assume that he would have tried to go to TNA, but they never approached him or never brought him in. Well, actually, they probably tried, but then he saw that they had all the smaller dudes, and he's like, well, there's no way they're going to beat me. So that's really my problem with fucking Goldberg is I hated the streak angle. I hate anything involving a winning streak. Because, like I said, it's doomed to fail. Because the guy has to lose eventually. There's no way around it. He's going to have to lose. You can't go your entire career being undefeated. Andre the Giant had to lose, and guess what? Didn't ruin his career. He lost to Hulk Hogan, his very first loss in 15 years. Didn't slow him down. He was still unstoppable. It could have worked. Had Goldberg lose one match, what would have hurt? Seriously. But that's WCW. They never built anything up. They never took the time to just write out a story, put it on paper, and say, okay, this is what we need to do. You know, bad guy, good guy, wrestle, fight, conflict, you know, plot. It's so simple. Hulk Hogan's the bad guy. He has the title. He has a group of guys. I've mentioned this. He has a group of stooges he is throwing at the good guy. The good guy is beating the other stooges to get to the king, the top guy. They have a match. Good guy wins. Payoff. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to buy the new WWE game, the 2K14, whatever the fuck it is. I'm going to make my own characters, my own wrestlers, and I'm going to have a match. I'm going to have a pay-per-view. I'm going to tape my fucking pay-per-view, and I guarantee you, I will have a better storyline, better characters, better build-up, better payoff than WCW ever did. I don't even have to do that. I can just turn on my old copy of SmackDown vs. Raw and still get that. This is not hard, and WWE does it too. Fuck me. That's all. That's all I got on Goldberg, you know. I never liked him. Never saw the point. I never got it. When he won the world title, I sat there in my seat, shook my head thinking, wow. Like, we're really putting the title on this douchebag. I guess the only thing he ever did right was beat people up. And, shit! There's actually, there was a WCW pay-per-view. And they literally did this. Kevin Nash was ready to powerbomb Goldberg and beat him. I guess the storyline was he was going to beat Goldberg again, but Goldberg like fought his way out of the powerbomb and just walked out of the ring. And Vince Russo got into his face. He's like, you get the fuck back in that ring. And Goldberg's like, fuck you, I ain't doing it. They literally built a pay-per-view around this, and this is how it went. It said, I think it was New Blood Rising. They said, at New Blood Rising, Goldberg went off script. They basically broke kayfabe and built a pay-per-view around it. I'm going to talk about Vince Russo next time because there was so much shit there, and I'll talk a little more in depth about that. But yeah, they fucking built a pay-per-view around the fact that Goldberg broke kayfabe. He went off script. you thought the Dungeon of Doom was a low point for WCW. The Vince Russo era was lower than that. Nobody has anything good to say about that, but I'll talk about that next time. So, again, thanks for watching. I'm not doing the Divas thing, not unless people want me to. You guys have to tell me to do it. And I don't mean just 1 or 2 people. I mean, like, I'll do it if 10 people request it. If 10 people say review the Divas thing, I'll do it. So, again, thanks for watching, guys. And next time, it's going to be the Vince Russo era of WCW. Get ready for some shit. I'll see you later.